friend of mine recently posted on Facebook this, and I quote, "For what it's worth, over the last year, I have worn a mask, socially distanced, followed the science. I still do. I got the vaccine when I was eligible. Now I can hug my family. Through it all, I've not felt my freedom violated. I've felt grateful for the sacrifice of so many others who fought every day to keep us safe. Some say that makes me a sheep. So be it. The Lord is my shepherd." End quote. Well said, Daryl. If we get enough people to wise up and follow the science and get vaccinated, we will have what's called herd immunity. That is defined as when a sufficient percentage of a population has become immune to COVID infection, whether through vaccination or previous infections, thereby reducing the likelihood of infection for individuals who lack immunity. And this is because what happens is enough people get vaccinated, added to the COVID survivors that have the antibodies naturally, this breaks the chain of transmission to non-immune people. So getting vaccinated, wearing a mask, it isn't just about me. It's about love your neighbor as yourself, to quote the Good Shepherd. So then we can be both sheep and shepherds caring for the rest of the herd. I have no problem being part of the herd. In Fairport, we are actually blessed to have some sheep nearby. Those of you who travel down the east side of Fairport, headed toward 31, you go there right by Aralt and Turk Hill Roads, not far from where Dave Aykroyd, our Mountain Rise newscaster, lives. There are sheep in a pasture. It's not exactly idyllic, though. It gets really muddy, and sheep, they just can't stay clean. They're not like cats. They don't lick themselves clean. They could use a good shepherd, right? Hearing the great metaphors of Psalm 23 and John 10, we usually focus on how we have a divine shepherd looking out for us. But what if we started thinking, feeling, and living like we can be shepherds ourselves? Maybe this idea comes to us now because Deborah Mosley and I have been shepherding a 3-month-old rescue dog all week now. It's going well. Ask Deborah. Honest, it is. But what, though, if we each do start looking for ways that we, in metaphor at least, could shepherd a person or two who we know? I mean, doing things like leading them to nourishing human connections, or protecting them from the wolves of isolation, or helping quench their soul thirst with spiritual community, and a little kindness, maybe. Some of you have done such shepherding for each other or a neighbor through this pandemic. I heard stories, even though most everybody does it kind of on the down low, not letting anybody know about it, but kindnesses happen and phone calls get made and notes get written. It's part of being shepherds for one another. So let's all find more ways, use our imaginations, that we can do more shepherding things like that. And if we collectively start looking at the rest of the world as an opportunity to shepherd. For instance, if we start looking at God's creation as if we are to be shepherds protecting her. Instead of letting creation be ravaged by the wolves of fossil fuel and mining companies, what if we start demanding protection for endangered species again? Let's face it, the last 4 years, if you look scientifically, were a disaster for habitats and animals because protections were weakened in favor of profits for a few. And I know that many of you are already doing this, not just the Mountain Rise Climate Action Team folks, the Green Cats, but lots of you are part of efforts locally and nationally to change the human impact on our planet home, God's creation. That's shepherd's work in a new way. And what if we start looking at public safety with shepherd's eyes? Years ago, Deborah and I were living briefly in Auckland, New Zealand, a city of about 1.2 million people. And in the center of this big city was a park called One Tree Hill. It was bigger than Highland Park, and it was more central. And sheep lived in this park year-round. No one bothered them. Now, to be fair, New Zealand had 3+ million people in the whole country, and they had literally 80 million sheep. So people were used to that. But one morning in this vast city, we smiled to see a headline in the Auckland newspaper, "Man found with knife on Main Street." And we sort of smiled and chuckled a little bit, feeling the contrast with U.S. headlines about violence or potential violence in the cities. You see, New Zealand has constables. That's what they call their police, at least at the time we were there. And they rarely carry guns, just billy clubs and radios. And things stay calm and respectful, and problems get solved. But one day we were concerned because after Deborah walked our 2 5- and 7-year-old boys to elementary school, a man, a stranger, kept tailing her back toward home, half a block or so behind. And after the second time this happened, the second day, we called the local constable. And the constable came and took a description and said he thought he might know who this stranger was. And the next day, the constable called us up to say, "No worries, I've had a chat with him, and I've given him a warning. He won't bother you anymore." And he didn't. Problem solved, shepherd style. What if cities like Rochester started doing public safety more like shepherds by building relationships in neighborhoods? A good shepherd knows their sheep. It's right in the book. Well, it's worth learning this metaphor of Jesus for lots of reasons. And it's worth maybe even memorizing that Psalm 23 that Deborah read at the beginning, written by the shepherd King David as a poetic meditation on the ever-seeking compassion of our divine shepherd. Years ago, I decided I needed to learn Psalm 23 by heart, and here's why. The most powerful recitation of Psalm 23 I have ever heard came in the midst of the most dire of circumstances. I'm standing with a woman whose husband of 30 years is laying in an ICU bed, surrounded by doctors and nurses who've just told us this is the end. The digital monitors and the actions of the staff all confirm these are the last moments of his life. So standing together with me in prayer, this woman just begins reciting from memory, "The Lord is my shepherd," saying it aloud as a benediction for all to hear. "I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters." Those words come from beyond almost, perhaps especially being said for her unconscious yet dying husband. He restoreth my soul. And above the din of beeps and pumps and medical commands, he leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. She intones on his behalf. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, for indeed this is that valley, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. God with her, God with him. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. I am praying that she can feel some of that comfort as her beloved slips away. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over, even as his time runs out. We trust that beyond all time and space, he takes his place at a banquet of blessing timelessly connected to all those whom he has ever loved. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. And as her words echo above that flatline tone of the monitor, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And we knew it in our hearts that this was true for him and for us. I came that you might have life and have it to the full, Jesus said in our text this morning. I am the good shepherd, and our Creator ever seeks to shepherd us toward the fullness of life. And what's wonderful is that we are created to do this and to be this with one another. It's something we do together. And the shepherd is in our midst. May God grant us the grace to be this and do this together. Amen.
Amen.